Hi everyone, in this video we're going to recap some of the basics of 2-point perspective sketching that you would have learned in S1. I'm going to start off by going about a third of the way down the page, and I'm going to create what we call our horizon line, that line that goes from left all the way across to the right of the page. Once I have my horizon line, I'm going to mark a point at the left and at the right, about 10mm in from the side of the page, and I'm going to label it vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2, or we could label them as vanishing point left and vanishing point right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a vertical line just off centre from my page, probably just left of the centre, and I'm going to create a vertical line straight up and down the page, and then I'm going to pick a starting point down at the bottom, and then I'm going to mark a height, and from both of those points I'm going to take them back to the vanishing point, so I can go from the vanishing point through to those points, or from the points back to the vanishing point. It doesn't really matter which way around you do it. And then I repeat that process going from vanishing point 2 to connect to those 2 points on my height line. Once I've finished my lines going back to the vanishing points, on the left hand side I'm going to mark a distance from that first height line. That's going to be the depth of my crate, or depth of my box, and I'm going to create a vertical line that is parallel to that height line in the middle. I'm going to repeat the process, this time on the right hand side, just with a longer length. And the same process though, I'm going to create another vertical line parallel to the two I've already drawn. Once I have all three of my height lines, I'm going to take the top of the height line where it intersects that line going back to the vanishing point, and this time I'm going to go to the opposite vanishing point. So going from vanishing point 2 all the way over to the left hand side. And what that does is it starts to create a top surface for our crate, for our box. And now, using where the lines intersect, I can line in the box that I've got. I'm going to use a fine liner pen for this, but you would normally just use your pencil, just leaning firmer to convert it from construction lines to outlines. And I'll go around and I'll line in the rest of this object. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to repeat the process, but I'm going to change my starting point. I'm going to change the length of that initial height line. And you see I've got my vertical height line. I'm going to join that top and bottom to vanishing point 1. And I'm going to do the same going over to vanishing point 2. My set square is a little bit short for this, but I'm going to point it in the general direction just so it would line up if it was long enough. I'm having to overlap that original shape, but it won't impact what I'm doing too much. So again, top and bottom, going now to vanishing point 2. And I follow that same process, getting my other height lines at a set distance, so going along from the left and along to the right, making sure they're parallel. And then I join from the right hand side to vanishing point 1. And then I join from the left hand side over to vanishing point 2. And where those lines intersect at the top, it creates my top surface that again I'm able to line in. And then just a third example, this time starting on the right hand side of the page with a much shorter height line, starting off by going from the top and bottom to vanishing point 2, making sure those lines go all the way back to the vanishing point, and doing the same thing going over to vanishing point 1 over on the left hand side. I've not extended them all the way back, but as long as they are long enough for our shape, that's okay. I'm going to get my distance from the height line on the left hand side to get my left hand surface, and the same again to get my right hand surfaces, making sure I keep them vertical. And then from the top of each of those lines, going to the opposite vanishing point, going from left to right, and then from right to left to close it off and create my top surface, which I'll then be able to line in. So next I'm going to use an example where the horizon line is a lot lower on the page, it's about halfway down, and I'm going to be drawing a perspective sketch above the horizon line. The process is the same, except the perspective is a little bit different. So still got my height line, this time above the horizon line, but top and bottom goes to vanishing point 1 and then goes over to vanishing point 2. So exactly the same process. Adding in my height lines on the left hand side and then on the right hand side to give me my left surface and my right surface, but this time it's the underside of the object that goes to the opposite corner, so going from right over to vanishing point 1 on the left and then going from the left height line over to vanishing point 2 on the right. And now as I begin to line it in, what you should be able to see is that actually I see the left surface and the right surface, but instead of seeing the top surface when it's below the horizon line, now what I see when it's above the horizon line is I see the underside surface, I see the bottom of the object. One final example to show you is where our height line overlaps the horizon line. So I'm going to start my height line just above the horizon line and then it's going to extend below. My process remains the same. I go from top and bottom of that height line over to vanishing point 1 and also over to vanishing point 2. I still select the length of my left surface and add in an additional height line, making sure it's parallel, and then picking the length of my right surface and again making sure that's parallel. But the big difference you'll notice here as I line it in is that you can't see either the top surface or the bottom surface. You can only see the left hand surface and the right hand surface. And the last thing we're going to look at is how we quickly create some examples of more complicated shapes using that 2-point perspective process. Each time our process is the same. We start with our height line and we extend the top and the bottom to the vanishing point on the left and the vanishing point on the right. What we do is we create our left surface and our right surface by deciding on the length and then extending up a height line. We do that on both sides, making sure you've got a good distance on the left and the right, and then from the top of those height lines you go to the opposite vanishing point to create our crate, our box that everything else is going to fit in. And then what we start to do is we look at subtracting little bits off these boxes, so segmenting it off. So in this case, half in the box and then picking up a little height so we can create an L shape on the left hand surface. We line that in so that it stands out. And then what we're able to do is extend each one of those corners of that L shape back to vanishing point 2. Each one of them going back to the vanishing point, extending from each intersection so we can see each change in direction. Once we have those changes in direction, we can start determining how long they are using the length of our crate and lining them in. But once we find new intersections, they start going over to vanishing point 1, and where we find extra little crossover points, that creates a new surface and we can line that one in. And then from that corner, we're not going to a vanishing point, we're going directly up. It's given us another height line because it's parallel to the one at the front, but you can see it joins up to another line that extends to the vanishing point, and that can also be lined in. Now this process is explained in one of our later videos, but it's important that you can quickly see the sort of shapes that we can create using 2-point perspective.